Shocking. Mark Carney's housing plan could leave many behind while Brookfield makes billions. As Canada approaches a pivotal election, the political landscape is charged with debates surrounding housing, economic stability, and the future of the nation. At the center of this discourse is Mark Carney, the leader of the Liberal Party and former central banker, whose housing plan has sparked significant controversy. Critics argue that his proposals could leave many Canadians behind, particularly as major corporations like Brookfield Asset Management stand to profit immensely from the current housing crisis. Canada is grappling with a severe housing crisis characterized by skyrocketing prices and a lack of affordable options for many citizens. The average home price has surged, making homeownership increasingly unattainable for young families and low-income individuals. This crisis has been exacerbated by a combination of factors, including high demand, low supply, inflation, and the influx of corporate investment in residential real estate. The housing crisis in Canada is not merely a statistical anomaly, it is a lived reality for millions of Canadians. Over the past decade, home prices in major cities like Toronto and Vancouver have risen dramatically, often outpacing wage growth. This disparity has left many families struggling to find suitable housing within their budgets. The situation is particularly dire for millennials and first-time homebuyers, who face an uphill battle in a market that seems increasingly geared toward investors rather than individual homeowners. The demand for housing has outpaced supply for several years, leading to bidding wars and inflated prices that make homeownership feel like a distant dream for many. Various factors contribute to this imbalance, including population growth driven by immigration and urbanization, limited new construction due to regulatory hurdles and rising costs, and foreign investment that complicates matters further. Rising inflation has compounded the housing crisis, making it more challenging for Canadians to afford homes. As inflation rates climb, the Bank of Canada has responded by raising interest rates, which directly impacts mortgage costs. Higher interest rates mean larger monthly payments for potential homeowners, pushing many out of the market altogether. This financial strain creates a cycle where the dream of homeownership slips further away for countless families. Large investment firms, including Brookfield Asset Management, have been buying up residential properties across Canada. With their vast resources, these companies can outbid individual buyers, further driving up prices. As Brookfield and similar firms acquire more residential properties, concerns about their influence grow. Critics argue that these corporations prioritize profit over community needs, leading to higher rents and less affordable housing for everyday Canadians. In response to the housing crisis, Mark Carney has proposed a housing plan aimed at increasing supply and affordability. While his intentions may be commendable, many critics argue that his approach may not adequately address the needs of the most vulnerable populations. Key elements of Carney's plan include increased housing supply through the construction of new homes and the conversion of commercial properties into residential units, support for first-time homebuyers through tax incentives and grants, and regulatory changes to expedite the approval process for new housing developments. Despite these intentions, critics argue that Carney's plan may inadvertently favor large corporations like Brookfield, which have the resources to capitalize on new developments. This raises critical questions about whether the plan will genuinely benefit everyday Canadians or simply enrich corporate investors. Brookfield Asset Management has been at the forefront of the real estate investment boom in Canada. As one of the largest alternative asset managers in the world, the firm has been actively acquiring residential properties and developing new housing projects. This aggressive strategy positions Brookfield to profit immensely from the ongoing housing crisis. As Brookfield and similar firms acquire more residential properties, there are fears that they will prioritize profit over community needs, leading to higher rents and less affordable housing. The aggressive purchasing strategies employed by large investment firms can lead to the displacement of long-term residents, particularly in urban areas where housing is already scarce. This trend raises ethical concerns about corporate responsibility in the housing market. As the election date approaches, the implications of Carney's housing plan and the role of corporations like Brookfield have become hot-button issues. Political opponents are seizing the opportunity to criticize Carney, framing his proposals as insufficient and potentially harmful to the very Canadians he aims to help. The Conservatives have been vocal in their opposition to Carney's housing plan, arguing that it fails to address the root causes of the housing crisis. They propose alternative solutions focused on reducing red tape and incentivizing private sector development without corporate monopolization. The NDP has taken a more aggressive stance, calling for a complete overhaul of the housing market to prioritize affordable housing for all Canadians. They advocate for stronger regulations on corporate ownership of residential properties and increased funding for social housing initiatives. Public opinion is increasingly polarized regarding Carney's housing plan. Many Canadians are frustrated with the current state of the housing market and are skeptical of any proposals that appear to favor corporate interests over individual homeowners. Recent polls indicate that a significant portion of the electorate is concerned about affordability and accessibility in housing, which could impact voting behavior in the upcoming election. A majority of Canadians believe that housing has become unaffordable and are looking for concrete solutions from political leaders. This sentiment is particularly strong among younger voters who feel marginalized in the housing market. Many voters expressed distrust toward large corporations like Brookfield, fearing that their interests will overshadow the needs of everyday citizens. This distrust extends to politicians who are perceived as being too closely aligned with corporate interests. As the election approaches, Mark Carney's housing plan remains contentious, raising concerns about corporate profit, particularly for companies like Brookfield. Voters are increasingly aware of corporate influence in politics and demand transparency. This election will serve as a referendum on Carney's approach to housing and corporate involvement in Canadian politics. The stakes are high, with a pressing need for a housing strategy that genuinely serves the public interest. Voters seek leaders who prioritize constituents over corporate profits. The lessons learned from this crisis will shape future policies, highlighting the need for a balanced approach that protects everyday Canadians while addressing housing development.